The key was so small I'd forgotten it existed. It sat at the bottom of my wallet for 18 years, pressed flat between expired receipts and a loyalty card for a grocery store that shut down a decade ago. No label, no markings, just dull brass, worn smooth like it had been handled too many times and then abandoned. My father gave it to me the night before he died. He was sitting upright in the hospital bed, oxygen hissing softly beside him, eyes sharper than they'd been in months. Cancer had eaten his body, but not his mind. He motioned me closer and closed his fingers around my wrist with surprising strength. "Daniel," he said quietly, "this is not a gift. This is a last resort." He pressed the key into my palm. "Whatever door it opens, don't use it unless you've lost everything." I laughed then, not because it was funny, but because it felt dramatic. Parents always thought the end needed meaning. I promised him anyway. He died 2 days later. I was 30 then, married, employed, comfortable. I'm 48 now, standing outside a credit union on a Wednesday morning with $112 to my name, a duffel bag in my trunk, and a voicemail from my ex-wife's lawyer reminding me I had 24 hours to vacate the house. I hadn't slept indoors in 3 nights. 3 days ago, my marriage ended in a conference room that smelled like lemon cleaner and power. My wife didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. Her attorney did that for her. "Mr. Hale," he said, folding his hands like a man explaining something simple to a child, "given the financial imbalance of this marriage and your limited earning trajectory, my client is offering a clean exit." He slid a folder across the table. $40,000. That was it. 12 years of marriage reduced to a number that wouldn't buy 6 months of rent in this city. "I was a civil engineer," I said. "I left my firm so she could relocate. I ran the household. I freelanced." The lawyer smiled. "Not kindly. Your wife's company valuation is north of 8 figures. Your contributions were supportive. Supportive. That's what they call disappearing behind someone else's success." The offer expired when I left the room. I signed. By evening, my key card didn't work. By morning, the locks were changed. By night, I was sleeping in my car behind a closed-down strip mall, staring at the ceiling and wondering how fast a life could collapse without making a sound. That's when I remembered the key. I sat there for a long time, engine off, holding it between my fingers. My father's words echoed, heavy and irritating. "Only when you've lost everything." I hated that he might be right. The key didn't fit anything I owned. No storage unit. No safety deposit box. No address attached to it. But there was one place I'd never checked. The credit union. My father had worked there once, briefly, before moving into consulting. That's what he always called it. Consulting. It sounded boring. Respectable. I never asked questions. Inside, the air smelled like carpet and paper. A woman behind the counter smiled automatically. "How can I help you?" I slid the key across the counter. "I don't know what this opens," I said. "But my father told me to come here if I ever needed it." Her smile flickered. "What's your father's name?" I told her. She froze. Not dramatically. Not obviously. Just enough that I noticed. "One moment," she said, standing too quickly. She disappeared through a door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." 5 minutes passed. Then 10. People stared. Finally, a man in his late 50s came out. Gray hair. Calm face. Hands clasped like he was holding himself together. "Mr. Hale," he said carefully, "I'm going to need you to come with me. Is there a problem?" He hesitated. "No," he said. "There's the situation." He led me down a hallway into a small office and closed the door behind us. Then he sat, exhaled slowly, and looked at me like someone seeing a photograph come to life. "Your father," he said, "was not a consultant." My stomach tightened. He was a silent partner in a private investment trust, one that hasn't been accessed in 18 years. I laughed. The sound cracked. "That's impossible." He turned his monitor toward me. I saw my father's name. Then I saw the balance. And everything I thought I understood about my life began to unravel. The number on the screen didn't register at first. I stared at it the way you stare at a foreign language, recognizing symbols, understanding nothing. My brain refused to assemble meaning out of what my eyes were seeing. I blinked once. Then again. The balance didn't change. The man across the desk, his nameplate read Martin Keene, branch director, didn't say a word. He just watched me carefully, like he was afraid I might break apart if he spoke too soon. "That's not possible," I finally said. My voice sounded thin, like it didn't belong to me. My father fixed old spreadsheets for small businesses. He argued with store managers over $10 discrepancies. He drove the same truck for 25 years. Martin nodded slowly. According to our records, your father did all of those things. He leaned forward and folded his hands. And he also controlled an investment trust with a current valuation of $31.8 million. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the alternative was screaming. You've made a mistake, I said. That money belongs to someone else. Martin didn't flinch. He clicked a few keys and rotated the monitor slightly closer to me. The name at the top of the file was unmistakable. Thomas Hale, my father. Beneath it was a list of transactions stretching back decades. Long-term holdings, equity conversions, deferred withdrawals, interest compounding quietly, patiently, like something alive. I don't understand, I said. Why didn't he ever touch it? That question, Martin said gently, is answered in the instructions he left. He opened a drawer and removed a sealed envelope. The paper was thick, yellowed at the edges. My name was written across the front in my father's careful block letters. For Daniel, when there is no other way. My hands shook as I took it. He was very clear, Martin continued. This envelope was not to be opened, or even acknowledged, unless you presented the key voluntarily. Not through inheritance proceedings. Not through death certificates. Only by choice. I swallowed hard. I broke the seal. The letter inside was handwritten. No legal jargon. No explanations meant for accountants or attorneys. Just my father's voice, preserved in ink. Danny, if you're reading this, then I was right about two things. First, you waited. Second, you needed it. I closed my eyes for a moment before continuing. I never told you about this because money changes the shape of people. It makes them louder, hungrier, smaller. I watched it happen again and again. Men who were kind become cruel. Families that loved each other start keeping score. I didn't want that for you. My throat tightened. When I was younger, I helped restructure failing investment pools. Most of them collapsed. One didn't. I was paid in equity because there was no cash. I never expected it to grow into what it did. When it did, I made a decision. I would live as if it didn't exist. I wanted to know who loved me without it, who respected me without it. And most importantly, I wanted you to become who you were meant to be without ever relying on it. I felt heat behind my eyes, sharp and unexpected. This account is not a reward. It's a tool. Use it only if life backs you into a corner so small you can't breathe. Only if the world decides your value for you and gets it wrong. If that's where you are now, then I'm sorry I can't be there to help you through it. But I planned for this moment. You are not weak for needing help. You are human. Be careful who you tell. Be careful who you trust. And remember, this doesn't change who you are. It only gives you choices. Dad. The room was silent when I finished reading. I wiped my face with the back of my hand, embarrassed by the tears, but Martin didn't look away. He gave me a moment. Then another. Your father was meticulous, he said quietly. He established the trust under conditions that prevented access during stable periods of your life. Employment thresholds, asset checks, credit stability. So it only unlocked now, I said slowly. Because I lost everything. Yes. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. 3 days ago, I was calculating how many nights I could afford to sleep in my car. 3 days ago, I'd been reduced to a signature and a cardboard box of clothes. And all this time, this had been waiting. What happens now? I asked. That depends on what you want, Martin said. You can access the funds gradually or immediately. The structure is flexible. But there's one more thing you should know. He turned the screen again. The trust has been monitored. By who? By a legal firm your father retained. They were instructed to intervene if the trust was accessed under duress or exploitation. My stomach tightened. What kind of exploitation? Martin met my eyes. Divorce settlements. Predatory contracts. Coercive agreements. I thought about the conference room. The ticking clock. The pen in my hand. The way I'd been rushed, cornered, and stripped of options. There's already a flagged alert, Martin said carefully. Your recent settlement triggered it. The room felt smaller. Are you saying? I'm saying your father anticipated this exact kind of moment, he replied. And he built safeguards. For the first time since my life collapsed, something unfamiliar settled in my chest. Not relief. Control. I stood slowly, folding the letter and sliding it back into the envelope. I need to make some calls, I said. Martin nodded. Take all the time you need. As I walked out of the office, past the counter where the teller pretended not to stare, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A new voicemail. From my ex-wife's lawyer. Mr. Hale, just confirming you vacated the premises as agreed. Please note, any delay will result in penalties. I listened to it twice. Then I smiled. For the first time in days, I wasn't trapped. I wasn't powerless. I stepped outside into the sunlight, the envelope warm in my hand, and dialed the first number that came to mind. Not a friend. Not my brother. A lawyer. And this time, I wasn't asking what I could afford. I was asking how far we could go. The law firm answered on the second ring. Hartman and Blythe. The receptionist said crisply, "How may I direct your call?" "My name is Daniel Hale," I said. "I need to speak with someone about overturning a divorce settlement signed under coercion." There was a pause, just a fraction of a second too long to be polite. "One moment, please." The line clicked, followed by soft instrumental music. I stood on the sidewalk outside the credit union, watching people pass by with coffee cups and purpose, all of them living lives that hadn't imploded this week. I wondered how many of them were one bad meeting away from the same thing. "This is Laura Blythe," a woman said finally. Her voice was calm, controlled, and sharp in a way that suggested she didn't waste words. "I understand you signed a settlement recently." "Yes." "When?" 3 days ago." Another pause. "This one longer. And you believe it was coerced?" "I was given less than 24 hours. Told I'd walk away with nothing if I didn't sign. Explicitly warned not to consult my own attorney." Silence. "Then, where are you right now?" "Outside a credit union." "Good," she said. "Stay there. Can you be at my office by 4? I checked the time. It was just past noon. "Yes." "Bring every document you have. And Mr. Hale, don't speak to your ex-wife or her attorney again. Not one word." The line went dead. I stood there holding my phone, sunlight warm on my face, feeling something unfamiliar settle into place. The panic that had lived in my chest for days was finally loosening its grip. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was responding. Laura Blythe's office occupied the top floor of a glass building downtown. Clean lines. Minimal decoration. Nothing that tried to impress you, because it didn't need to. She met me herself. Mid-50s. Gray streaks pulled back tight. Eyes that missed nothing. Her handshake was firm, efficient. "Mr. Hale," she said. "Come in." Her office overlooked the river. She sat, opened a legal pad, and gestured for me to begin. "Start from the moment you were presented with the settlement." I told her everything. The meeting, the ticking clock, the lawyer's smile, the way my wife hadn't looked up from her phone, the threat of bankruptcy, the signature that felt like surrender. Laura didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she leaned back slowly. "That settlement," she said, "is deeply problematic." Hope flickered. "You were pressured, denied independent counsel, presented with an unconscionable offer relative to the length of the marriage and your non-financial contributions. So it can be overturned?" "Yes." The word landed like oxygen. "But," she continued, "your wife's attorney will fight viciously. They assumed you were cornered. People don't like discovering their leverage was temporary." "How much will this cost?" $800 an hour, she said without apology. "And likely 6 figures if it goes to trial." I nodded. "That won't be an issue." Her eyes sharpened. "It was an issue 3 days ago. I inherited money from my father. Recently." Laura studied me for a long moment. Then she smiled, not kindly. "Good," she said. "Then we can do this properly." The emergency motion was filed 48 hours later. I was sitting in a quiet cafe when my phone rang. Unknown number. "This is Daniel Hale." The voice on the other end was clipped, irritated. "Mr. Hale, this is Gregory Sloan, counsel for your former wife. We need to discuss this motion your attorney filed." I took a slow sip of coffee. "I don't believe we do," I said. "My lawyer will handle all communication." "You're making a mistake," he snapped. "That settlement was fair. You signed willingly." "No," I said calmly. "I signed under threat." "You had options." "I was told I didn't." His tone hardened. "Whatever money you've come into doesn't change the fact that you agreed to the terms." "Actually," I said, "it changes everything. Because now I can afford to challenge the way you obtained them." Silence. Then, more controlled, "My client is open to revisiting the numbers." I smiled. "Funny," I said. "There was no flexibility when I was desperate." "Be reasonable." "I am," I replied. "I'm using the same legal system you did. I just have representation now." I hung up. 3 hours later, Laura called. They want to negotiate, she said. And I told them no. I exhaled. Thank you. The hearing was scheduled for the following Wednesday. Judge Evelyn Carter presiding. Laura's tone shifted. Judge Carter has zero patience for coercive tactics. This is good. The week leading up to the hearing felt unreal. I rented a small apartment. Nothing fancy. Clean. Quiet. A place that belonged to me. I bought clothes that fit. A desk. A lamp. I slept in a bed again. I called my sister for the first time in 2 years. You disappeared, she said softly. I know, I replied. I'm back. The courtroom was colder than I expected. My ex-wife sat across the aisle in a tailored suit. She didn't look at me. Her lawyer did. Judge Carter entered promptly at 9. She reviewed the documents, then looked up. Mr. Sloan, she said, your client offered Mr. Hale $40,000 for a 12-year marriage. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. And he was given how long to decide? 24 hours. Judge Carter's eyebrow rose slightly. Was Mr. Hale permitted to consult independent legal counsel? Sloan hesitated. We advised against delaying the process. That wasn't my question, the judge said coolly. Was he allowed to seek counsel? No, Sloan admitted. Laura stood. Your Honor, she said, this is textbook coercion. Judge Carter turned to me. Mr. Hale, did you want to sign that agreement? I stood. No, Your Honor. Did you feel you had a choice? No. The judge made a note. This court finds sufficient cause to set aside the settlement, she said. The motion is granted. This matter will proceed to trial. My ex-wife finally looked at me. Her expression wasn't anger. It was disbelief. As we left the courtroom, Laura leaned close. This is where it gets ugly, she said. I nodded. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of that. The call started the same afternoon. Not to me. To Laura. They're nervous, she said when we spoke that night. That motion rattled them more than they expected. Why? I asked. Because people who rely on leverage panic when it disappears. She was right. Within 48 hours, Gregory Sloan requested mediation, then withdrew the request, then tried again, each message more polite than the last. Laura declined them all. We prepare for trial, she said. Let them exhaust themselves. The discovery phase peeled the marriage open like a wound. Financial disclosures, email chains, calendars, expense reports, patterns emerged. My wife's company filings showed explosive growth during years I'd quietly handled everything else. Travel schedules matched weeks I'd rearranged my work to stay home. Emails referenced dinners, introductions, follow-ups, things I'd organized without thinking they mattered. Laura noticed immediately. They'll argue income, she said. We'll argue contribution. The difference mattered more than money. The first witness came from a direction I didn't expect. Laura called me late one evening. Do you remember a woman named Rachel Myers? I paused. She worked with my wife. Early years. What? She contacted us. My stomach tightened. About what? Laura smiled through the phone. I could hear it. About who actually made those early deals happen. Rachel testified on the second day of trial. She was calm, professional, uninterested in drama. I attended multiple client dinners at their home, she said. Mr. Hale handled everything. Planning, hosting, follow-ups. Preston, no, Sloan objected. Relevance. Judge Carter didn't look up. Overruled. Rachel continued. Those dinners weren't social. They were strategic. Investors talked more freely there. Deals progressed. Laura leaned forward. And who prepared the presentations discussed at those dinners? Rachel didn't hesitate. Daniel did. I saw drafts. Edits. He simplified technical language for non-technical investors. My ex-wife shifted in her seat. Sloan's jaw tightened. Then came the emails. Laura displayed them one by one. My edits. My comments. My reminders. Not glamorous. Just consistent. You supported your wife's career? Laura asked. Yes. At the cost of your own? Rachel nodded. He turned down offers. He stayed available. Sloan tried to reframe it. So you're saying Mr. Hale chose domestic convenience over ambition? Rachel looked at him calmly. I'm saying the company wouldn't exist without the stability he created. The room went quiet. My wife took the stand on day 3. She was confident at first. Controlled. I paid for everything, she said. The house. The cars. The accounts. Laura nodded. And who managed the household? We had help. That wasn't my question. A pause. He did. And during client events? He assisted. Laura smiled thinly. Assisted, she repeated, by planning, hosting, editing, and follow-up while maintaining freelance work. Yes. So not assistance, Laura said gently. Partnership. Sloan objected. Judge Carter let it stand. Then Laura called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. My former supervisor. Mr. Hale, Laura asked, why did you leave your firm? To relocate for my wife's opportunity. Were you offered promotions before that? Yes. And did you decline them? Yes. Why? Because her schedule required flexibility. Someone had to handle everything else. The words sounded heavier aloud than they ever had in my head. The defense tried to paint me as passive. Laura dismantled that narrative piece by piece. Is supporting a spouse's career a lack of ambition? She asked one witness. No. Is managing a household while freelancing full-time idleness? No. Is sacrificing your own advancement to stabilize a family worth nothing? The witness didn't answer. They didn't need to. Closing arguments took a full afternoon. Sloan argued numbers. Income. Titles. Laura argued value. She stood slowly, hands resting on the podium. This case is not about greed, she said. It's about erasure. She gestured toward me. For 12 years, Mr. Hale's work was invisible because it didn't come with a paycheck large enough to impress. But without it, there would have been nothing to build on. Judge Carter listened without expression. When Laura finished, the room felt emptied. The judge took 2 days to decide. I spent them walking, thinking, sleeping without panic for the first time in months. On the third morning, the courtroom filled again. Judge Carter entered. She didn't waste time. This court finds the original settlement unconscionable, she said. It was obtained under coercion and failed to account for non-financial contributions critical to marital success. My wife stared straight ahead. The court orders equitable division of assets, the judge continued, including sale of the marital home and equal distribution of investment accounts. Sloan stiffened. Additionally, Judge Carter said, the respondent will pay compensatory support to offset professional sacrifices made by Mr. Hale. The number followed. It felt unreal. My wife's face drained of color. Outside the courtroom, Laura exhaled slowly. That, she said, went exactly how it needed to. I nodded. Not because of the money. Because for the first time, someone with authority had said it out loud. My life had value. The courtroom emptied faster than I expected. One moment, the judge was still seated, papers being gathered, voices hushed. The next, people were filing past me like the whole thing had been an inconvenience they were relieved to be done with. 12 years of my life reduced to a ruling and a stamped order. Laura shook my hand outside the courtroom doors. You did well, she said. Most people would have folded long before this. I almost did, I admitted. But you didn't, she replied. That matters. Across the hall, my ex-wife stood with Gregory Sloan. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She looked hollow, like someone who'd rehearsed a victory speech and suddenly had nowhere to deliver it. She didn't approach me. I didn't approach her. Some conversations don't change anything once they're over. The weeks that followed were procedural and exhausting. The house went on the market. The accounts were audited. Documents moved between offices in thick envelopes with stiff paper and sharper language. I signed where Laura told me to sign. I waited when she told me to wait. For the first time in years, I didn't manage everything alone. The settlement finalized quietly. No apology. No dramatic confrontation. Just numbers balancing out where they never had before. When Laura called to confirm the final transfer, I was standing in my small kitchen, making coffee in a chipped mug I'd bought for $3 at a thrift store. It's done, she said. All assets distributed. Support paid. You're free. Free. I hung up and sat down at the table. I didn't cry. I just sat there, breathing, feeling something settle inside me that had been restless for years. I didn't buy anything extravagant. That surprised people. I upgraded my apartment to a small house on the edge of town. 1 story. Quiet street. A yard just big enough to take care of without resenting. I bought furniture slowly, thoughtfully, things that lasted. I paid off debts I didn't even realize I was still carrying, the emotional ones, mostly. I called my sister every Sunday. We talked about nothing important and everything that mattered. 3 months after the trial, I ran into my ex-wife at a downtown cafe. She looked thinner, tired. She hesitated when she saw me, then walked over. Daniel, she said. Hello. An awkward pause. I didn't expect all of that, she admitted. The trial. I know, I said. She nodded slowly. I thought money was the only thing that counted. I studied her face. I believed she believed that. It's not, I said. She sighed. I see that now. We stood there, two people who used to share a life and now shared nothing but memory. I hope things work out for you, she said finally. They are, I replied. And I meant it. I didn't touch most of my father's trust. I invested it conservatively, quietly. It grew the way he'd intended, without noise. I used a portion to do something he would have approved of. I funded a small legal aid initiative for people who signed away their rights because they couldn't afford to fight. No plaques. No press releases. Just help where it mattered. I went back to work. Not because I had to. Because I wanted to. Structure mattered. Purpose mattered. On my first day back, one of my coworkers clapped me on the shoulder. Good to have you back, he said. You look lighter. I was. One evening, months later, I sat in my backyard as the sun dipped behind the trees. A book rested open on my lap, unread. A cup of tea cooled beside me. The house was quiet, peaceful. I thought about the man I'd been 3 days before I walked into that credit union. The one sleeping in his car. The one who thought his life was over. He wasn't weak. He was just out of options. And sometimes, that's the only moment when the truth finally gets room to breathe. I took the key out of my wallet. The same small, dull piece of brass. I turned it over in my fingers. My father had known. Not the details, but the pattern. The way life can back a person into a corner so tight they forget their own worth. He'd planned for that. I walked inside, opened a drawer, and placed the key inside. It had done its job. That night, as I turned off the lights, I realized something simple and powerful. The money hadn't saved me. Standing up for myself had. The money had only made it possible. 1 year passed faster than I expected. Not because life became exciting or dramatic, but because it became quiet. And quiet, I learned, has a way of slipping by unnoticed when nothing is breaking anymore. On the first warm morning of spring, I stood in front of my classroom watching sunlight stretch across empty desks. The school year was ending. Students would arrive soon, loud and restless, counting minutes until freedom. For a moment, I stayed where I was, breathing in the calm. There had been a time when I thought this room meant failure, a symbol of what I hadn't become. Now it felt like home. Mr. Hale, I turned. One of my seniors stood in the doorway, clutching a folder. I just wanted to say thank you, he said. You wrote that recommendation letter. I got accepted. I smiled. A real one. You earned it. After he left, I sat at my desk and looked at the stack of handwritten notes students had left behind over the semester. Gratitude, scribbled in uneven ink. Small things. Honest things. No one here cared what my net worth was. They cared that I showed up. That evening, my sister came over for dinner. We cooked together, bumping elbows in a kitchen still too small for company. She teased me about my choice of plates. I teased her about burning the garlic bread. You seem settled, she said finally. I am. She studied me for a moment. You know, you disappeared for a long time. I know. But you came back, she said. That matters. We ate slowly, talking about family, about nothing important, about everything important. After she left, I washed the dishes by hand, not because I had to, but because I liked the rhythm of it. Simple tasks grounded me now. They reminded me I was present. I visited my father's grave a week later. No flowers. Just silence. I told him what had happened. Not the money. Not the legal details. He wouldn't have cared about that. I told him I was okay. I told him I finally understood why he'd lived the way he did. He hadn't been hiding wealth. He'd been protecting meaning. The trust remained mostly untouched. I used what was necessary. Nothing more. It grew quietly in the background, exactly as he'd intended, like something that existed without demanding attention. Knowing it was there didn't change my days. Knowing I didn't need it, that changed everything. I established a small scholarship fund in his name. Nothing flashy. Just help for people who needed a bridge instead of a miracle. When the paperwork was finished, I felt lighter than I had after any financial transfer. This money, used right, didn't inflate. It disappeared into purpose. Late one afternoon, as I left the courthouse after helping a former student navigate a housing dispute, I saw her. My ex-wife. She stood near the entrance, phone pressed to her ear, expression tight. For a moment, she didn't see me. When she did, she froze. We stood there, strangers who knew each other too well. She ended the call and walked over. Daniel. Hello. An awkward pause. You look different, she said. So do you. She nodded, then sighed. I didn't realize how much you carried until it was gone. I believed her, but the realization came too late to matter. I hope you're doing well, I said. She hesitated. I am. Busy. Successful. I smiled gently. I'm glad. She searched my face, maybe expecting resentment, maybe hoping for it. There wasn't any. I should go, she said. Take care, I replied. As she walked away, I felt nothing pull at me. No anger. No regret. Just the quiet relief of a chapter fully closed. On the last day of school, after the halls emptied and the final bell rang, I sat alone at my desk. A year ago, I thought my life had ended in a conference room with bad lighting and a ticking clock. Instead, it had restarted in silence. Loss had stripped away illusions. Desperation had revealed truth. I hadn't been worthless. I had been unseen. That evening, I drove home as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in slow-moving colors. I pulled into my driveway and sat there for a moment, engine off, windows down. The house was modest, the street quiet. Lights glowed warmly inside. No mansion, no luxury cars, no noise announcing success. Just peace. Inside, I made tea and sat down with a book I'd been meaning to read for months. Outside, night settled gently over the neighborhood. Tomorrow, I'd grade papers. Next week, I'd plan lessons. Next month, new students would walk through my door, unsure of themselves, looking for someone to believe in them. And I'd be there, not because money saved me, but because when I had nothing left, I finally remembered who I was. The key still sits in my drawer. I don't carry it anymore. I don't need to. Months later, nothing dramatic happened. And that's how I knew everything had finally settled. My days were predictable in the best way. Morning coffee, lesson plans, students arguing about books they pretended not to care about, evenings spent reading, walking, sometimes calling my sister just to hear another human voice without urgency attached to it. The trust remained where it was. Quiet, patient, no longer the center of anything. I didn't feel rich. I felt safe. And there's a difference most people never understand until they lose both. One afternoon, while cleaning out an old wallet, I found the slot where the key used to sit. Empty now. Smooth leather where it had worn itself into memory. For years, I thought that key represented money. It didn't. It represented permission. Permission to stop believing the lie that my worth depended on someone else's valuation of me. Permission to fight back when the world decided I wasn't worth fighting for. Permission to start over without shame. My father didn't leave me wealth. He left me timing. He waited until I had nothing left to lose, because that's when fear finally loosens its grip and truth has space to speak. I've learned something since then. Sometimes life has to take everything away before it gives you back yourself. And if you're listening to this story right now, feeling like you're at the end of something, maybe you're not. Maybe you're just standing at the door you haven't opened yet. Our story ends here. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. If this story meant something to you, consider subscribing. It helps more than you know. I've picked 2 more stories for you that I think you'll enjoy. I'll be waiting for you in the next one. See you soon.